I actually had someone after church try to justify this. They said, I would never dunk Oreos in orange juice, but I have dunked them in Sunny D.
Yeah.
That
counts.
No, I mean, so Sunny D is better than orange juice because it's not.
But
as
it's still
acidic.
why?
Are there
But
people
why would you
who
do
are
that?
doing this?
Why would you do that?
Is this a thing?
Why would you ruin an Oreo? One of God's greatest creations.
Welcome to The Gathering Greenhouse, a podcast to help us grow together. I'm Steve.
I'm David.
I'm John.
And we have a lot to talk about today. We had
That's how you always start a meeting when something bad's going to happen.
Oh, really?
Welcome to my office.
I would say I said it with
today.
like an uptone. I might say we have a lot to talk about today. Like
That's
it's going to be bad
corporate
news.
version of we need to
Do you
talk.
just get into it when you have to bring bad news? Are you the rip the Band-Aid kind of person?
What do you think?
No, I think you have a slight bit of fluff. Where
It is
you kind of
the
like,
season we're running into. So.
but then it's a rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, I'm pretty much a rip the Band-Aid off most of the time.
Yeah, because you seem you don't seem
nice
off.
way.
Well, yeah, you all. I know you do.
Steve's had me rip the Band-Aid
Yeah,
off.
of course.
By the way, we have to talk.
We
when
have
we're
worked
done here.
together for 10 years, so
when we're done, we got to go have a conversation.
if we haven't had an awkward conversation in 10 years, there'd probably be something wrong with your leadership.
That's true. Yeah. Did you
Because
see what he just did? He basically just
put it
said,
on you?
If you've ever had to confront me on something,
It's you.
right.
it was you, not me, obviously, right?
Yeah. All right, so we have a lot to talk about
got a
today.
lot.
And, yeah, we have a lot to talk about. So we are in a sermon series called, I'm going to screw it up, Elephant, Donkeys,
Elephants, plural.
More than one elephant.
Elephants, Donkeys, Sheep and Goats. Sheeps and Goats. There's a plural on everything? Was there a plural on everything? Is that what it was?
Except the lamb. There's one lamb.
The lamb. Not
Well,
goats.
yeah, obviously.
Behold,
There's no goats.
the Lamb of God.
There was no goats involved.
There's no goats.
There's no separating the sheeps and goats
No,
happening.
we're not doing that.
Okay.
No goats.
All right,
Jesus
well, I
did that
totally
to
screwed all that up.
So it's elephants.
Elephants, lambs,
Did he say elephant?
This might be the most fun.
Elephants.
All right, here we go. Keep going.
donkeys, and the lamb.
No, you're close.
Elephants, donkeys,
I want to know what are the mathematical.
sheep and the lamb.
There you go. If you just take the four animals, what are the mathematical number of variants you could have as far as
A lot.
Like,
Well,
I don't
like-
know what it would be.
I mean, realistically, there's probably only two.
16 maybe.
I'm going to bring this back to you. It was your title. So,
Yeah. The funny thing is we've done it before.
yeah, we have.
So,
I would
yeah.
take full blame for
Elephants,
donkeys, sheep, and
the lamb. So the point is, you got your elephants and your donkeys, which represent kind of the American political system, right?
Yeah.
Your Democrats and your Republicans. You got sheep, which is sometimes we use it as a negative to talk about people in political seasons.
follow things.
They're
that
talking about the
blindly
right?
follow.
But then at the end of the day, the most important one is the lamb. So we don't follow the elephants or the donkeys. We follow the lamb. So yeah, it's kind of a whole big mixed metaphor thing, but also just fun to say.
It is fun.
All right, so where were you going with all this?
I'm going with it is that we're in the middle of this series that we're doing. So this past Sunday, we had probably the one so far that has had the most reaction of people that I've heard coming out of it, or taking notes, or all of those things, in a good way.
People walking out of the service with scowls on their faces.
Well, you know, most people walked out of the service and said, "Do you dunk your Oreos in orange juice?" That's what they first said to me. And I don't. I'm going to look at camera here. I do not
It's
dunk
not
my
orange
Oreos.
juice. It's apple juice.
But now that I actually got to go back and listen to the message and listen to what you said, you weren't implying it was a rumor that was spreading.
Right.
So you
Would you call
never
it fake
you
news?
never
It was
assigned
fake news.
you would never assign truth to it.
Right.
But, you know, people came out and they wanted to know the truth.
I actually had someone after church try to justify this. They said, I would never dunk Oreos in orange juice, but I have dunked them in Sunny D.
Yeah.
That counts.
No, I mean, so Sunny D is better than orange juice because it's not.
But
as
it's still
acidic.
why?
Are there
But
people
why would you
who
do
are
that?
doing this?
Why would you do that?
Is this a thing?
Why would you ruin an Oreo? One of God's greatest creations.
Yeah.
Okay, the question is
Preach it.
double stuffed or regular stuffed?
As much
Double
stuffing as you can get.
They have
Giant-
mega. I believe there is a
There
mega
is.
stuffed.
Giant, mega, uber stuff. The more stuffing, the better.
Could you just buy just the stuffing in a can?
I think you might be able to.
If you can buy just the
Yeah,
stuffing.
true story. One year for Christmas, two of the kids in my youth group who are now married, shout out to you, Jackie and Jeremy, they gave me for Christmas like one of those little tins that you like with all the Christmas decor, and I opened it, and it was all Oreo filling. Like they had, I don't know, bought how many packages of Oreos
scraped it out
and scraped them
See,
all
that
out.
might be the best stuffing too, because it's
Yeah.
not like it's not like
the
they.
real
and,
thing.
and you'll get
It
a
would
little
ha-
bit of the cookie
That's what
shavings
I
on
mean.
it.
You're
Yeah.
gonna get the flavor of the cookie.
It was
in
amazing. I was
Yeah.
so fat back then.
They need to. They need to sell.
Do we
the-
have any
the
pictures?
cream.
Can we get a
There are-
picture
there
from
are, there are
David?
pictures somewhere of fat David, the youth pastor.
Is that why you wore flannel a lot? Because people couldn't tell.
No, it's because I lived in Michigan. So, not
'cause
only
he's a
did I
lumberjack.
like one year when I was a youth pastor, I did a challenge with the kids, and I don't remember what their part of the challenge was, but I lost, and as a result, I had to eat 100 Burger King cheeseburgers in a year. So
That's not. That's
it
too
didn't
weak.
seem like that all that much, but it over time that becomes a lot.
What? Why?
Well, it was a win-win for me, right? I motivated
How is
the
it a
ki-
win-win for you though?
Because I motivated the kids to do what I wanted them to do, and I had an excuse that I could say to Mary
Okay,
Ann,
so you wanted
I gotta
to
eat at Burger
you
King.
wanted to do that.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right.
Back then, Burger King
wasn't-
cheeseburgers
He
were
had to eat
awesome.
100 in a year, accomplished it in 2 months. It was pretty, pretty great.
Back in the good old days of Burger King.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well, let's get into it here. There's 7 practices that you talked about in your sermon Sunday, and I watched the third service, and you got to your application really fast, and you made note that, hey, it's not that the sermon's ending, it's because we have a lot of applications. So there's 7 points here, and each one of them could potentially be a sermon in itself because there's
Probably, yeah.
plenty to talk about in all of them. But if you could give us like an understanding of like what are these 7 practices based on? Like, is it something in the political realm? Is it something with news? Because we talked about news. Is it something about discernment? Where would you classify these practices in regards to?
So I would call these 7 practices to help you discern truth before you spread a lie.
Okay.
So I think you can take them out of the
Just good advice.
political realm
Yeah.
and say this is just wisdom. And it certainly applies to relationships.
Yeah.
But also any way that you consume information.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all rooted in Proverbs 15:14, which says that a discerning person seeks knowledge or seeks the truth, whereas the fool just consumes the foolishness,
Yeah.
right? And so the idea is don't just be a consumer of information.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's politics or anything else, certainly there's a really good application here to gossip.
Yeah.
And that that applies to church world so much because people love to spread things and like rumors that Steve dunks his Oreos in
Right.
orange
It
juice.
spread fast.
It did. Now everybody thinks it's true. So, and
It's true.
I stick to it that if you do that, that's a deep character flaw. I mean, yeah, you shouldn't do that. But so
Is that the unforgivable sin? Is that what people are talking about?
Dunking your Oreos.
yeah. But so it doesn't have to be political.
Yeah.
But for our usage yesterday, which
Yeah.
was Sunday, it was certainly targeted towards political stuff because in this time right now, there's a lot of information flying around, so many memes, so much on social media that people need to not consume uncritically. That was terrible phraseology, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
So
Critically, I like that.
Yes.
we need to discern the truth before we share it.
Yes.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, you said
here.
it much better than I did.
Okay, well, I'm looking at your notes here when I said it. So it's kind of your words.
People don't realize if I just stuck to my notes, our sermons would be so much shorter.
Probably true. I think you should cut yourself a little more slack. I think you do a great job with that. I mean, because I've heard your sermons and I've heard some of the other stuff. The sermons are way more concise and on point.
What do you mean when you say some of the other stuff?
Like the when we do the Wednesday
the deep dives.
The deep dives. I could say this is David being able to go off his notes as much as he wants to, and then the Sunday stuff where you stick more tightly to your notes. I'm like,
yeah, I don't know though. I think the deep dives I cover way more content.
I think you just have way more notes.
Maybe.
Right. Well, and part of that is because for a sermon, that's every week. There's a routine I follow. I'm working on a sermon for 4 weeks. With the deep dives, it's just a whole different routine.
Yeah.
And so I do have to have a lot more notes that I stick to.
Okay, so before we get into the 7 practices here, are they in any particular order?
I think so.
I kind of felt that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had said that, but it seems like they're in maybe not necessarily like chronological order of what you should do, but they're probably in a pretty good references. Just go 1 through 7 in these things.
Yeah. So I think the first one is kind of maybe foundational.
Right. So confirm and consider is number 1.
Yep. And I think that's the foundational one. And then the rest of them are really kind of how do you do that practically. Yeah. And then the last 2 are these like super relevant to who we are today, but not timeless at all. Some of them are timeless principles. The last 2 are certainly not. Yeah.
Yeah. So like you said, if you're using this to discern truth in other areas, you may not necessarily need to go through all of these.
Right. Yep.
So use your judgment there.
Yeah.
But so confirm and consider. You want to go into a little bit more detail of what that means.
Yeah. Let's start though by just talking about why it matters.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good point.
Why does it matter that we understand and discern the truth, and why does it matter that we don't share lies?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it matters because God is a God of truth, and those people should be people of truth. And, I mentioned this in the sermon that when we swallow one little lie, we now open up the door to swallow bigger lies. And I really do think, and I didn't talk about this, but I think it's a good path to kind of think your way down. A lot of people who deconstruct their faith, that begins with swallowing a little lie. And very often, in maybe the last 8 to 10 years, those little lies have come out of the political sphere. That they swallow a little lie that sends them down a path, and then they start to just swallow bigger and bigger lies uncritically. And eventually that leads them to the shifting from, I'm believing these things about politics and politicians, and now I'm believing these lies about the Bible and God and the church and Christianity, and so I'm just going to throw the whole thing out. And so I think it is really, really important that we work hard to understand the truth. But also, if I'm going to love my neighbor, I can't be telling my neighbor lies, and I can't be bearing false witness. And so that means, talking to them truthfully, not spreading things that are not true. So, yeah. So there we go.
Okay.
So confirm and consider.
Confirm and consider.
So a better word than confirm would have been verify, right? I think that's actually a better word for what I was trying to communicate, but the preacher in me has to, alliterate everything, and so confirm and consider it was. But the basic idea is, if you hear something, even if you believe it and like it and agree with it, and even if it supports your position, you should still verify that it's true.
Yeah.
Right? So if you see something about so I think that, let me not say I think, but if you're a person who says, I think the border should be closed, and I hear that there are Haitian refugees eating cats, that's evidence that the border needs to be closed. By the way, that's conflating 2 issues. There's a difference between refugees and immigrants, right? And there's a difference between legal immigrants and illegal immigrants and yada, yada, yada. So the 2 issues are getting conflated where they shouldn't. Refugees have nothing to do with an open border. But also, even if it supports my view, I need to say, well, maybe I need to verify that this is true before I start sending memes all over the place, because it might turn out that it's not true.
And I think this is one of those things where it gets complicated, is that, and I'm not talking about this specific immigration, but there are issues where, like, the meme that gets shared is not true. Whereas, like, the fact that it's trying to communicate on a practical, real level is not true, but maybe the philosophical or even the foundational spiritual truth that it's hitting at is true. And so what gets really complicated, it's like you'll see something and be like, and I think this happens with jokes a lot too sometimes. It's like the joke hit at a deeper truth, but what it said practically on the very real world level was untrue. And it's like, well, is that untrue or is it true? And it's both, but I think it's hard sometimes. We need to be cautious when we share that kind of stuff, because while it may be true at a deeper level, if it's untrue at that first level, it undermines sometimes that underneath.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and maybe this whole conversation actually belongs in the, cross-check your references when we get to that practice. But let's stick here for a second, because this is maybe a really important truth for us to remember, that regardless of whether a meme is created by the red side or the blue side, right? If it's false, the source of it is the same, right? It's the father of lies. It's the devil. It's Satan. So anytime there is a false meme or whatever that's circulating the internet, that originated in hell, and it's there to distract us from truth. And so sometimes we need to remember that my side might be producing things that are sinful and wrong, whether the intentions are good or not. If it's false, and it's a lie, and I that's why I need to verify it. And the other side of this, so that's the confirm side. The other side is the consider. Yeah. And just really simply, it's this: if I see something that I disagree or don't like, I shouldn't dismiss it out of hand. Yeah. I should always ask myself, am I dismissing this because I don't like it, or am I dismissing this because it's not true? And then the rest of our practices are set up to say, how do I figure out if it's true? Yeah. So
okay. Great. So let's move on to the second one, which is don't believe the first report.
Yeah.
So does this mean like just throw it out, or what do you mean by don't believe the first report?
Yeah. So Proverbs 18 tells us that a man who seems right until he's cross-examined, which is essentially saying the first time you hear something, you rarely hear the whole story, and you rarely get the whole truth. So it's not saying throw it out, but it's saying don't give it your full belief. Don't buy in. Leave yourself open to change. And maybe a better way to phrase that would have been to say something about patience. Yeah, like the first time you hear something, just be patient and wait.
And just say, that's strange.
Right, like we talked before we went on camera about the assassination attempt. Oh, can we say that on YouTube?
The attempted,
so you're not going to see the rest of this video. The assassination attempt, right? That happened yesterday. We know very little about that. Yeah. And so now is not the time to be opining and blaming and, well, this happened because of this, or this happened because this person did this, or that side keeps saying this, or that person keeps doing this.
The first report does not have enough information.
We just don't know.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's actually a really good example of why you wouldn't necessarily believe the first report, because they don't have enough information. Right. It's not necessarily that even maybe there's an intent all the time to make a first report true or false, but they may not have all the information yet.
This is where it's not the first report on the attempt, right? So my phone started getting alerts saying, hey, Trump was rushed off a golf course. There appeared to be a shooter. Like, that report was fine. There was no agenda in that. Like, it was just, here's info as it's coming. It was the second round of people saying, I literally within a span of 2 hours saw people saying it was the Iranians, people saying it was the other party's hired hitmen, people then just going into the whole, it's all about rhetoric campaign. And we don't know any of that yet. And so that's where it's the report of it, this thing is happening. That's not what you're saying, ignore. News is news, but it's when people are starting to shape it and spin it and things that can't be verified yet, that's where you really need to be.
Is that the opinions? Because I had the same kind of experience where I'm like, hey, let me just throw on the news real quick and see what they're saying, if there's any new information. Well, they start going into how could this person even end up on the golf course? To how would they have even known Trump's schedule? And then all of a sudden someone starts giving their opinion on how this person could have known the schedule. And if you start believing some of those things, you're thinking, okay, well, maybe it was an inside job. There's a lot of different ways you could go, and they were just putting their opinion on how this could have happened.
Yeah, and again, what we're hitting on, and this is where all of these practices kind of overlap each other, because now what we're talking about is observation versus interpretation, right? Here's what happened versus here's what you need to think about what happened. And I'm going to be honest, when I first saw, I don't remember where I first saw it. When I first saw that there had been another, I didn't believe it. Yeah. That's the point where I am now, is I was just like, well, okay, maybe. And I wasn't in a place where I could go and check other places. So it wasn't until later that I, went online and checked some different sources and news sources and was able to say, okay, so that this did happen. But at that point, I just left it alone. Yeah, the temptation, I think, and there's nothing wrong with doing this. The temptation is to just really quick turn on the news, like I do sometimes. Turn on the news and say, okay, what happened? I want to know more. I want to know more information. But a lot of time, as you just pointed out, there isn't more information.
And they're just filling airtime.
And all you're going to get is opinion. So
it's not
that's
even
when I turned it off. I'm
it's-
like, this
it's
isn't helpful.
Opinion plus speculation, which that I think is really, because speculation often sounds really informed.
Yeah.
So they say, well, this happened, then this happened, and so clearly A plus B equals C, and that's not even so much just, oh, here, my opinion, how I feel about it, but that sounds like you're laying out truth of what actually happened when you're just speculating.
Yeah. So I actually, in a really funny way, Anchorman 2 is a powerful commentary on all of this and like how we got here. And it really goes back to OJ. Right, with it, OJ got us here in his slow white Bronco. So, yeah. If you don't make the connection and just think it through, we didn't used to have 24/7 hour news. But all right, what's our next one?
All right, CrossCheck References.
Yeah, which is what we've been talking about.
We have, yes.
So you just don't believe the first thing. So check elsewhere.
But I do have a question about this. So. No matter if you're, Republican or Democrat, no matter where you lie on the issue, is it good to cross-check references with a news source that maybe if you're a Democrat, look at some Republican websites. If you're a Republican, check some, to try to get the truth within there and to discern better, should you have a wider range of cross-checking that you do?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. So, like, if you always watch Fox, then you should probably check something else.
Yeah.
Right? Like CNN, MSNBC. Let's just stay away from MSNBC, right? So maybe just CNN.
Someone who leans a little more towards the middle than
so if you always watch CNN or MSNBC, maybe check Fox. But I would say more importantly, get away from all of those ones. I think actually News Nation does a pretty decent job. If you are familiar with news personalities, you should watch News Nation because the evolution of Chris Cuomo is fascinating. If you watched him at CNN and you watch him now, it's a really fascinating dynamic. But also, I mean, go to some other source like BBC.
What's the one?
NPR.
The Australian one.
I have no idea.
Some people
Sky
is possibly that people listen to.
Right. So there's so many different places you can get your news, but check lots of them. What's really interesting though is there are some stories that like the big guys won't even run a story on. Like you'll check CNN and you'll like look everywhere, search, you can't find anything, or you'll check Fox, look everywhere, and that's when you say, okay, there's probably is something to this. And now you go and look at the smaller guys, and they usually have stories.
So
and
either
go local,
and that would be either the bigger guy doesn't want to publicize that for some reason, or maybe it's because there isn't enough facts to it. So
it's
it could
usually
be either
the
way.
first. It's usually the first. They don't. They don't. It doesn't fit the agenda. But another great thing to do is go local. Like if there's a story that, like, say this story happened in Boise, Idaho. Yeah. Okay, why do you need to go to Fox News or CNN?
Check the local news.
Yeah, just look up. Okay, what are the local news stations in Boise, Idaho? Go there. You're going to get a much better account.
Yeah. Okay, next one is question the intent of headlines. Yeah. It's a good one because headlines have gotten ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. It's like everybody wants to be the Weekly World News now.
Yeah. Well, they get money based on clicks.
Is there still a Weekly World News? Do you guys know what that even is?
Is that like an internet thing or
no?
Is that
no? It's actually print. It's paper.
It's on TikTok.
Okay, so it used to be. I mean, I think they're still out there a little bit when you were in the grocery store. Yeah. And there's all the magazines at the checkout line. And like the National Enquirer, which always had the crazy stories. But then you had the Weekly World News.
Oh, it's in there?
Which was just they just had the wild stuff.
Oh, like the UFO, UFO, some guy.
Like this senator is the love child of Daniel Boone and an alien stuff, kind of like just really weird.
No,
things.
That was not what I was thinking. Yeah. So I'm glad you clarified.
No, I love the Weekly World News.
I was thinking about this after, because you talked about, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams using the press, right? And it's not just that people in political agendas are using media and the press to advance their agenda. It's the other thing that's happened is when it was just print media, it took time to write the story, get it edited, get it published, and get it out there. It wasn't this immediate, just type on my phone, hit send. And in that time, I think there was a lot of opportunity for things to calm down, and also to actually say, am I painting this the right way? You know, and then we went to TV, and that sped up a lot. But even with TV, there's an editing process, and it took a little bit of time, and you had a lot of eyes. Where we are today is you have people on the ground reporting news through their X account, or and they're going live on Facebook, and it's so much faster than it used to be, that I think that's also pushing us into this. We're quick to judge because I see it. It's right there, immediate. It's instant, and there's not this cool down period between the event and me having to form an opinion on it.
Right. Yeah, and it's good to remember that most of the time the writers of articles don't pick the headlines.
Yeah,
someone else is actually writing the headlines, and you, especially nowadays, you have people who are experts in getting clicks.
Yeah,
that they're the ones writing the headlines to try to get you to click through.
So along those lines, would you say that, you know, the thought of this one is that there's an emotion they're trying to make you feel when you read the headline, but is it also like going back to like our earlier one, like who's the source? You know, like, because sometimes something pops up in a feed and you're not necessarily seeing, like, you know, you're just seeing the headline, and it's not like you went to CNN or Fox or anywhere that you are getting a headline and a source that maybe you're not even seeing who wrote the article. Like, where's it coming from? So do you take some of that into consideration?
Like who wrote it?
Yeah.
I think, and where it comes from, I think you do. But for me, it's less about that when you come to the headlines.
Okay.
And it's more about just asking yourself what's happening internally for me right now. Like, is this headline, like, what's my initial response? Is it anger? Is it fear? Is it doubt? Whatever. So we need to throw this out to the historians, though, because you brought up, you know, Jefferson and Adams, and so you're going to pay the consequences now.
Uh-oh.
So people don't realize this, but it was the media that cost John Adams a second term of his presidency, because Jefferson and his henchman, James Madison, by the way, turns out to be a great president because he kind of gets away from Jefferson. And so, but Madison and Jefferson go after Adams for his whole first term, and Adams can't take it. He hates what they're saying about him, and he hates what's being said. So he goes along with this Alien and Sedition Act, which like crunches down on freedom of speech in a way that was just hideous and awful. And as a result, the people are like, well, we don't want this guy to be our president again. And so you end up with John Adams, who has maybe had the potential to be the second greatest president ever after Washington. Turns out to be a one-term guy because he couldn't handle what the media was saying about him. Just really fascinating that this was, you know, right at the beginning of our country.
Yeah.
So also a lesson to us, you know, don't worry about what other people say about you. You have no idea what your response might end up costing you. So,
True.
All right, what's next?
What is next here is distinguished between observation and interpretation.
Right. And we've been kind of talking about this.
Yeah.
Like, you know, what's opinion versus what's fact.
Right. And that's no more observable than you just turn on the 24/7 news channel and you're going to get a lot of observation and interpretation.
Maybe just a little hint here that I didn't mention in the sermon is, as soon as somebody starts talking about why somebody did something, they've crossed the line, right? So if somebody says, well, you know, Kamala Harris said this because... Okay, now that word "because" means I'm going into motivation and what her intention was. Now I'm guessing.
Yeah, unless they are directly quoting Kamala Harris as saying, I did this because I, you know.
Right.
It is your interpretation of what. Yeah.
Nobody's a mind reader.
Yeah.
Right. And now cross-apply this to your relationships. You should never do this in a relationship, right?
You should say, definitely.
John, you did that, and I know you did it because you hate me.
Listen, how many problems would be solved if we all did that? I mean, there would be so many problems solved if we did this in our relationships. And let's be honest here, it's probably in a spousal relationship that it's the most important.
Right. Yeah.
Is it? It's very easy to do this with the people you live with.
Yeah, but you just think that because
I knew where you were going right away with that.
Because
yeah.
Yes, when we make assumptions, it's bad.
I think where this gets challenging is that all observation, because we're human, is very susceptible to being tinged by our interpretation.
Absolutely.
Right? But all all interpretation requires first observation. And so often you'll be listening to something and they lay out the facts, right? And that sounds like observation, but it's like then they pivot. But you get caught thinking it's observation, and then you are now listening to actual interpretation, not just the initial.
Let's make this super practical and maybe a little bit of offensive for a minute, okay? so we all see the world through our presuppositions. Yeah, so for me, I recognize what some of those presuppositions are. Things like I absolutely believe in God. I believe that God created the world. I believe that Jesus was God, all that stuff, right? So I see the world through that lens, and I'm the first to acknowledge it. So it's hard for you to convince me otherwise because I believe those things. But in the political realm, we do the same thing. So if I see everything that Kamala Harris does through the lens of I think she's an idiot, right? Because I've decided that she's an idiot. Then everything she says and does, I see through that lens. Well, there's more proof that she's an idiot. And we actually talked about this on the podcast. That phrase she uses about, what could be unburdened by what has been, which I actually think is a good phrase. I will go to my grave saying that's a good turn of words. It's good. But if you think she's an idiot, it doesn't make sense to you. Just, well, that's not an idiotic thing to say. And the same is true with Donald Trump. If your presupposition is that Donald Trump is a racist, then everything you see him do proves that he's a racist. Yeah. This is the Steve Oreos and orange juice story.
Yeah, right? I had a conversation with someone, about those things of like, why do, like we've gotten so far away from even the whys that we're stuck on these, either she's an idiot or he's a racist, whatever it may be, right? Is that is like the prevailing truth from one side or the other, that sometimes you don't even know how we got there. Like, well, why do people say that he's this thing and she's this thing, Right. Because now it's already been so ingrained in what the arguments are that people give.
Yeah. This is why I've kind of gone to this place when I'm trying to understand. So there is not when I'm just trying to find out what's going on, but when I'm trying to understand the thoughts and the where people are coming from, is I actually tend to prefer, this sounds weird, I tend to prefer openly biased media sources for stuff like that, because I like when someone says, I'm a liberal reporter, I am a conservative, and I like to read both stories because it starts helping you make sense of, oh, they're saying it this way, that there's probably this underlying thought here. And that helps me understand the other things they say. And if they're saying it this way and I'm understanding that they're coming from that story from this foundational perspective, I can, it's a little bit easier to start interpreting what they're actually saying. And then you can often find, you're like, okay, these two people have a huge disagreement. And it all comes out of that. There's a foundational disagreement on what, the underlying truth is in this thing. And that's not to say all viewpoints are valid, as valid as each other or equal. I do think there are some sources that I'm like, I like you because I agree with the foundational thing that you're building off. But I think for me to only read the ones I know that I agree with leaves me completely unable to understand when people, and so when I don't understand at all the place they're coming from, I quickly go, well, that's just not true. Or that's just disregard, throw it away. And I have a much more hostile attitude versus understanding the actual like foundational ideologies or belief systems that are, making them see that way.
Yeah. And you usually can't change that.
No.
Those presuppositions, those are very, very hard to change. So, all right. Where are we at? Where are we at?
We have two more to go.
All right,
sweet.
Yep. So these are the two that are kind of, they're not timeless principles.
No,
but they work for where we are today.
Okay. Yeah. Next one. So this would be number 6. Yeah, number 6. Ignore pictures.
Yep. Ignore pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually saw one last night. I don't remember what it was. I was like, here you go. This is perfect example of what I'm talking about. John, talk about this because you understand this better than we do.
Yeah, I mean, so the point you were making yesterday was that, because pictures can be manipulated, and today, we can do AI generated images, and some of them are incredibly convincing.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah.
It was this. You're gonna like this.
Okay.
So it was this picture, this beautiful, like, lush mountains covered with greenery, and the tops of the mountains were super sharp. Right?
Yeah.
So like, sometimes mountains are pointy, sometimes they're more rounded. Right? They're super sharp. It kind of looked Lord of the Rings. And the headline was "Come to Hocking Hills in Ohio."
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Not Hocking Hills.
We actually probably have all experienced this. Like, you're shopping on Amazon, or like what's the cheap one?
Temu.
Temu.
Is it Temu or Temu?
Temu.
It's
learned that
Temu?
at the Super Bowl last year.
I think it's Temu.
It's Temu.
Yeah. I hear everybody call it Temu, though.
So you look through the pictures.
Yeah.
And like the thing looks great. Looks well built, like whatever. And then you buy the thing.
And it's a piece of junk.
Right?
Yeah.
The picture was manipulated to convince you that this was something that it actually isn't. And we've all probably bought a product like that.
They're also copying images that we associate with quality.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you kind of start seeing that this plays out with our news, all news sources have been guilty of this, where they will crop a photo. I mean, just take some time, Google stories of news networks and journalists manipulating images, and it is a long list.
Yeah.
They did it. O.J. Simpson. There's a very common example. Yeah. So one news source seemed to like change the lighting on an image, and it darkened, and it made him just look way more menacing. And it's a complete.
Did you ever see that guy on the football field? He was menacing.
He's a big dude. But that image alone did shape the story a little bit. And so there's tons of examples of this. And so just being aware that images can easily be manipulated. Not everything you see is true, and people are really, really, really good at Photoshop. If my goal is clicks, not truth, then I'm not going to have any issue manipulating the image to get the click. And I don't think it's always journalists. It's sometimes just people create memes, and they think they're being funny, and
people like edit a picture of their lead pastor and send it out to the whole staff.
I pity the fool.
So yeah, let me jump on that for a second though.
Yeah, remind me to put that in
and go back to the whole the Temu thing. That part of the reason people buy those things is because they want to believe that they can get that quality for that price.
Because that's a good feeling.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, this is a steal.
Yeah.
And I want to get that quality for that price, and so I'm going to go for it. And this is what we have to understand about pictures, and this is why it's good to just say, I've got a personal policy. I just ignore pictures. It's because it battles against my internal desire to see what I believe.
Yeah.
Right? We always say, well, seeing is believing. Oftentimes, what I see, I see it because I want to believe it.
Yeah.
And that's especially true if it confirms my previously held biases.
Yeah. Very true. I feel like this may be one, like, it sounds super easy, but it may be one of the most difficult ones because it's so much based on things that you perceive but don't even fully know how you're perceiving it.
Right.
It's not necessarily based on reality. It's based on years and years of editing and publicizing and advertising that has been done to shape the way we think.
Right. Yeah. But also, remember that a photo only captures a moment in time.
Yes.
I've got this great picture in my office. Not my office here. I don't have one of those. But it's a picture of Liam when he was playing soccer, his freshman year of high school, and he's sliding from behind. And his leg is between the legs of the guy who has the ball, and he's about to play the ball.
Yeah.
And it looks terrifying.
Yeah.
It looks like something really awful is about to happen.
Yeah.
And the caption, it's like one of those posters. The caption is soccer, football for the brave. It looks like Liam is about to really hurt a kid.
Yeah.
And now, the reality is it was a brilliant play. He went between the guy's legs, played the ball, never fouled the guy. You would never know that from looking at the picture. Looking at the picture, you would say that's a clear foul. What a dirty player Liam is.
Yeah.
But it was but that's the problem with pictures is they only capture the moment.
Very true.
Yep.
It captures a moment from a singular perspective is the other element of that too.
Right.
Is,
yeah.
You only see what the photographer at that moment saw,
Mhm.
and then what they edited. And so,
Yeah. Well, it's highly effective. That's why people do it.
Yeah.
You know.
well, and sometimes it's not super malicious. Sometimes they're wrong. Like they get the photo and they say, "Wow, I can't believe I caught this photo. I need to show up. This is evidence of this thing." And then often a different angle comes out.
Yeah.
And you're like, "Oh, okay." You know, but that photographer, it wasn't that they were wrong. What they saw is what they saw.
Yeah.
But that's where we have to sometimes step back and be like, I'm going to make sure, verify that this is actually what happened before I run with it.
Which is this is why, even though there are plenty of pictures, we don't believe in Bigfoot, and we don't believe in the Loch Ness Monster.
Bigfoot.
Right? I mean, maybe you do. All right. Last one.
Matt, what's your nickname?
Sasquatch.
To clarify, Matt's nickname from high school is Sassy Sasquatch. So
everything makes so much more sense now.
There's so many problems with that.
All right, should we get to the last one here?
Yeah, last one.
Okay. Search for full-length video sources versus a edited clip.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of it's the same thing we just talked about, is that people edit things to make you see what they want to see. And one of the things I said in the sermon was nobody ever shows you a video that they don't want you to see. Right? Yeah. The reason they're showing you the video is they want you to see that video.
And they want to invoke something.
Yes, they want to make you think something. So it's just always better to say, I need the full-length video on this.
Yeah, I feel like the political season is one of the worst times for this as well, because there's sound bites that are associated with a truth after it.
Coming out of the debate Tuesday, I could have edited either of the candidates to sound like the guys whose names start with H and ends with Hitler. Like you can manipulate what people say, and it's so easy with. It's so easy. And people because I edit videos, I see edits, I see the cuts, but people on Facebook don't notice the cut.
Right.
And so you don't realize that it was this sentence plus this sentence, but those were 3 minutes apart from each other and have to, and so people, I mean, it's similar to the photo thing, but the clips you see could be something that they never even came close to saying. And it's unfortunate that people take advantage of that.
Anytime I see a video clip where there's a change in camera angle, like you go from front to side, or even from close to far or far to close, any kind of my immediate assumption anymore is there's something there that I missed. They just took something out that they don't want me to see because it changes the narrative of the video.
And there are times where we just had
we
a
do it all the
baptism
time.
Video. We do it whenever we share testimony. We got to get a 10-minute interview down to a 2-minute video. So we cut out the stuff that isn't necessary to the story, right? But that's us sharing somebody's story. It's not us having a political agenda, but yeah, when it comes to things that are political or news-based, I'm very suspicious when I start seeing the in and out, and because I do that when I make a cut, and so just be aware that that's a thing people are doing.
Right. Yeah. So just real quick on that, the expectation here is not that every time you see a video you go and you find the full length source, right? But the point is, before you make that one of your core beliefs, and certainly before you share it or spread it, you should be sure about it. So, it's probably just better not to pass videos on unless you've gone back and found the source.
Yeah.
And then, so the main point of all these seven, the seven practices are for us to better discern truth.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's another conclusion from this as well, is that often if we listen to one side or we listen to the very polarizing political scene that we hear, that it leads us down the trail of the world is terrible, everything is bad. If I don't do this, the world is going to fall apart. And that leads us to anxiety and stress and becoming a person who only sees the bad in other people, and I think that's a very unhealthy life to live if we aren't trying to discern truth, or we don't really make much of an effort to go outside of ourselves to really find out what's going on.
I think you're 100% correct, and there's a reason why, and this isn't you or you, but there's a reason why your generations deal with a lot more stress and anxiety and depression than my generation does. And I do think one of the big ones is we grew up with, there was the local news at 6 and the national news at 6:30, and that was the end of it until 11.
Yeah.
There was nobody telling us doom and gloom all the time. And one of the reasons that they are always trying to tell you there's doom and gloom and everything is bad is because they want to control you, because they want you to take the action they want you to take, thinking that's the fix, right?
A fearful person is the most susceptible to manipulation.
Yeah.
Because fear feels urgent. And when you think things are urgent, you act quickly. And when you act quickly, you don't engage your reason. And I think that's the thing that traps a lot of us is, we think the world's ending. So if the world is actually ending, I have to act drastically.
Right.
And we can't sustain that. That is just emotionally, that's not good for us.
Yeah. So just spoiler alert, the world will not end until Jesus says it's going to end, and nothing we can do between now and then will change that.
Yep.
So that's just the easy answer to that. So let me finish with this.
Yeah.
Much of the news is awful. Much that you see on social media is awful.
Yeah.
But much of the news is not real life. And almost all of social media is not real life. What? And real life is not awful. So get off of your devices, get away from the television, get out into the real world, and discover that everything is not awful. God's creation is actually awesome, and it is to be enjoyed, and there is much to enjoy in it. So, get away from all of the screens. The screens are not helpful.
Agreed.
All right.
Except when you watch this.
Watch more of this.
Right here.
This is not awful.
This is a real plant right here.
Fake news.
This is absolutely. I need to water these after we're done. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you back here next time.